Hello, everybody. We're not that late. I still think technically it is fashionably late, but we had to get our takes sorted and all that good stuff, you know.
We had to make sure we agreed on everything before we kicked off, because we like to present a unified front here at Seattle Overload.
Yeah, we rather than most of the industry, I think it's good practice to have conflicting takes at times. We choose to just have the same takes every single time. And so that unified front continues into our takes and makes for really exciting content. Right, Griff?
Yeah.
Yes, Franco Brunha Salazar, exactly. Making sure your priors were correct. That's exactly what we're doing. They were correct, by the way. Like, you can check the receipts. What did I say? I said that Addy would climb up the draft boards after testing. Aditomiwa Adibare. And he did. We'll talk about him. But before that, that's too much football talk, actually. That's awful. That's terrible. Before that, Griff, do you have a non-football topic to annoy people while everyone gets involved?
Yeah, I had a few. I always think like, oh, that would be a funny thing to annoy Matty with before we start. And then I forget when the big flashing lights say live on air.
Little peek behind the curtain there that I get very annoyed off there. That's bad.
Yeah. You guys should hear how Matty mutters to himself. He's like
I have
the
to mute my mic
Englishman.
constantly.
Yeah, the Englishman jumps out.
Do we have a reputation for muttering?
I mean, everyone mutters to themselves. You just mutter very Southern English like.
Right.
Very yeah.
I recently went to Spain, Griff, and
Yeah.
I got by with incredibly pidgin Spanish. It was terrible.
Nice.
It was seriously
Do
embarrassing.
they just roll their eyes and start speaking English to you?
No, well, I think they appreciated the effort, given that the
Right.
Americans were there, going like being
Yeah.
American.
Right. That's what I wonder, how non English as a first language speaking Europeans, how they approach English tourists or British tourists versus American tourists.
Well, to be clear, I don't think the majority of English tourists are any better, and I'm not claiming to be better, but I really did. I like trying to. I think it's polite.
Yeah, absolutely.
And given I was being very brief and abrupt because I do not have a grasp of language, I actually think the Spanish servers, as you guys would say, or waiters and waitresses, I think they appreciated that because they are quite efficient and,
Yeah.
well, they were
Yeah.
with me. They're very brusque,
Nice.
but not in a
Yeah.
rude way. Just in a
Yeah.
let's get you your food and drink
Right. Yeah. Let's
and
hop to it.
sherry and
We have
yeah.
an agenda.
There you go.
Yeah, and you have a big appetite. People don't know that about you. You
I
can put down
do.
food too.
I do, and I did great. I did great,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, I
You
went
ate
to.
all your vegetables. You were a
No,
very
there
big
wasn't much
boy.
vegetables. It was
Oh,
mainly just like different types of pork, prawns, squid,
wow.
cuttlefish.
So surf and turf then.
Yes, but not in the same dish, just as a different
Yeah.
tapas.
Yeah.
Or what I like is in Madrid, it was called ración, like a ration,
Mm-hmm.
which is like a plate for 4 people. But then you can get because I was just with one other person. You can
Yes.
get a media ración, which is like a half ration, which was for 2 people, which is perfect. Very nice.
Nice.
It's just so much more civilized, and like a beer was €3, which is cheap.
Yeah. Now the Spanish have really figured out the whole small plate thing, haven't they?
Yes, but then notice a ración is for 4 people, so that's not
Right.
actually that small of a plate. It's just
True.
the
It's
idea
more
of sharing
large.
food.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, how about this? They figured out, portion sizes in general for what you're going for. haven't
Yes.
they? They're very
Yes.
efficient that way.
Yeah.
Nice. Now, did you hop over to Portugal while you were there?
Yeah, because it's just down the road. Like
Right.
it's like you driving from Seattle to Kirkland or something.
Right. Yeah.
Does that work? How far is
I feel like
Kirkland?
you're from Seattle, like 10 to 15 minutes.
Damn it. No, I messed that up.
So I take it you did not go to Portugal.
No, and I didn't go to Kirkland when I was in
Now
Seattle either.
I wonder, do the Portuguese, do they also speak Spanish? Like, you would think they would learn Spanish, right? I mean, obviously, like, the languages, have common roots anyway, so it wouldn't be like that hard pick up. But like, is it like a thing? Like, our I'm just curious. At a proximity, it would make sense, right?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. You'd have to ask
Mm.
them in
Maddie, why
Portuguese or
won't you
Spanish.
educate me on European culture and geopolitics? Come on.
Well, I could be stereotypically English and not care about that at all,
Right.
and or even shun it.
Now, see, no, that is interesting because let's segue. I've been reading up and watching a lot of documentaries on the geopolitical climate leading up to World War One, after World War One, leading up to World War Two, and after World War Two. And there's obviously a lot of directions you could go with that. But one of the common themes is how Britain has wants to distance themselves from the notion of being European, in addition to their British nationality. Whereas the French embraced their French nationality while simultaneously embracing the concept of being European. And is that just like a pure like geographical thing? Because you're literally distance is just kind of easier.
Well,
Whereas
I think
say that,
so, but like the
and like,
positives, the positive spin would be like who you're going to trade with if like you have to you have to establish relationships for trade
right,
if you're an
right,
island. It's pretty
right,
hard to be a sustainable island
right.
as much as
This goes right into Brexit, doesn't it?
yeah we don't we were
No, okay.
sort of we're sort of hovering around that, but like what period are you talking about just throughout history?
Well, what's crazy is like the common threads, how you can connect like the legacy of World War One really to World War Two and the post World War Two European climate through the Cold War all the way up to today. It's all like the legacy is so clear. Like, it's not old news. Like, World War One is still so relevant in so
Yeah,
many ways. Which, no shit, but like,
yeah,
it's just,
it was pretty big,
yeah, it was
Mm.
big it was
It was
globally big.
great in the size sense, not the
Right. Right.
positive. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, man, war is bad, huh?
Yep. Again, just to reiterate, we are an anti-war podcast. That's not
We are
meant to be a double
pacifists.
negative. It's a double pronunciation for our small but relevant United Kingdom listeners.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's nothing a British person wants to hear more than an American pontificating on European politics, huh?
No, it's interesting, but like, what documentaries were they? Was it like
So
NPR?
one was, I think, it was like a Channel 4 thing, like your equivalent of PBS over there, I think. Like, not BBC, it was like another, it was called The Long Shadow, like a
The
4-part
Long
series or
Shadow.
3-part series.
Wow.
It was very good. By some professor.
David Reynolds.
Yeah, David Reynolds.
I'll have to check that out. Never heard of that.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's kind of like a what's what. It doesn't really dive in deep. It kind of touches on themes and concepts through each period and like trying to connect the dots very loosely, and then you can go in and backfill with your own research with each thing that he talks about, really. But he connects it
So you
all
just
together
like
and
so
weaves it
to be
together.
clear, you pause the program and then Wikipedia the thing that's being talked about.
I did anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
That's a good
it's it's
idea.
it's conducive toward doing that. You're like, oh wow, let me read up on that. Wow.
Nice.
You read a few Wikipedia paragraphs. Oh wow, an expert on this now.
Yeah. That's like
Yeah,
anything.
yeah. Like I'm gonna go impress Maddie with my knowledge of how the EU formed, stuff like
Right.
that.
Like if you look at the 4-3 under Seattle Seahawks defense, the citations are very interesting. There's certain experts cited in that article.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is
Not
is
by the own author. Like to be clear, like now that's already made myself look guilty, but it's not by me. It's someone's done it.
but you've been cited in it though.
I have.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Here, yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty cool. Not a big deal, but Will Rindford, Matty needs steroids and Griff needs development.
That is a reference to a tweet made by someone today.
Right. I don't think I do much with steroids. Like I might get very powerful typing.
Hey, now you could tussle with your players when you coach them.
True. Yeah, just like start throwing them around in the old school sense. Sure.
Yeah,
No, you have to be a player first coach. It's not the way.
yeah. But that comment though leads us right into today's happenings.
Okay, I'll do the intro.
Okay, do the intro.
Welcome to the Seattle Overload podcast, where we have our first NFL Combine 2023 reaction podcast. We have a bit of pertinent news. Very pertinent news. We also have testing numbers from the interior defensive line, the exterior defensive line, if that position even exists anymore, and then the kind of outside linebacker types and inside linebacker types. So a big need for Seattle coming in. And immediately the combine started with some pretty crazy news regarding the guy we thought was the best player in the NFL draft, Jalen Carter. The ACCPD, they released an arrest warrant. They secured arrest warrants for Jalen Carter for reckless driving and racing. It found that Carter was racing a 2021 Jeep Trackhawk versus tragically Chandler LaCroix, who I believe was a Georgia recruiting assistant, and another player as well, who both unfortunately passed away. The toxicology report indicated that LaCroix's blood alcohol concentration was 0.197, so way over the limit. And Carter himself then got booked for reckless driving and racing. So he flew from the combine back to Athens Clarke County Jail, and then he since has returned back to the combine to complete his interviews. Kind of a thing where it's just a lot to process. It wouldn't surprise me if teams knew about this incident or knew this was about to happen. There was also the Todd McShay report about immaturity, which came before this. It came 29th of December. Obviously, this tragic incident happened 15th of January. So we don't know, maybe he'd been racing before this. There's questions of whether he was intoxicated as well. But it seems the big thing is the fact that he decided to leave the incident and in the police's eyes, and didn't, as far as we know, didn't call 911, didn't do anything, just sort of left. Carter released a statement on his Twitter saying, "This morning I received a telephone call from the Athens, Georgia Police Department informing me that 2 misdemeanor warrants have been issued against me for reckless driving and racing. Numerous media reports also have circulated this morning." This was the day that the news came out about him being under 2 warrants, containing inaccurate information concerning the tragic events of January 15th, 2023. It is my intention to return to Athens to answer the misdemeanor charges against me, which he did, and to make certain that the complete and accurate truth is presented. There is no question in my mind that when all of the facts are known, that I will be fully exonerated of any criminal wrongdoing. So, Griff, we obviously are not in a position to know, and we will never probably know as much as the teams know. But is there a take on this?
I mean, I think, like, first and foremost, probably should wait for, I guess, proceedings to completely, fulfill themselves, because the devil's probably in the details a little bit as far as, I don't know, casting final judgment. Like the thing of, if he was there near the scene afterward and then left, like, you have to call that in. And I mean, like, if there was a chance that he may not have known if they were dead or not. And if there's a chance that could have been saved, time is of the essence with getting a 911 call in. So the last thing you should ever do in any sort of motor vehicle accident that you're even like tangentially involved with, even though he didn't cause the accident directly and he wasn't in the car, is call 911 and don't leave the scene. So it's that is probably like that's a huge piece of it here. On top, outside of that, like street racing, I mean, it's that kind of belongs in the bucket of, as far as like offenses go from like prospects and just college students in general, that's kids being absolute idiots, and you call it idiocy because someone could get hurt, and so often no one does get hurt, and you just say, wow, you're really lucky nothing happened, and you just kind of move on with life. This is a case where obviously something happened, so consequences have to be dealt with. Like you said, I'm sure teams already knew about this, and more like you said, they probably even already knew more than we will ever know. So like, from a cynical perspective, I actually don't think that this, kills his draft stock. If anything, he might fall down a few slots, but he's still going top 10. The league doesn't care about, they only care about this insofar as it relates to like signaling future misbehavior or future decisions. I don't think they care from a moral standpoint, whatever that standpoint is or should be. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, very similar to you. Is street racing a big thing in America, like amongst?
I mean, amongst college kids with nice cars, oh yeah.
I never even realized that.
It's not like everyone's doing it, but it happens on every campus. Every team is doing it. And like, if Kirby Smart and Nick Saban can't convince you not to go be an idiot on a Friday night or a Saturday night, then no one anywhere is going to. Every program, I'm sure, has some hotshot high profile player doing something dumb like this that we never hear about, because what percentage of these end in a car accident? Higher than most, Friday night drives, but still low enough that we rarely hear about it,
Yeah.
If so, I think the other main variable here is if he was drinking or not.
Yeah, the alcohol being involved, and whether he will never know, I don't think, because he seemingly managed to leave the scene without the police,
yeah,
being able to test him. So
yeah,
but the police report described them driving 104 miles per hour, swerving in opposite lanes of traffic. Like, I mean, it's street racing, but
yeah.
Yeah. Now, Rap Sheet did report that they did not know the full extent of this, but I mean, teams would perhaps say that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and also
they need to wait for the full facts. They may not have known some of the details.
Right. And some teams may not signal that they know to the media because they want to know if anyone else knows. They want to have the information.
Yep.
But yeah, go ahead. No.
So the reason the combine is so important, as much as we'll be talking about the numbers, is teams need to check out the character. Like any job interview, teams need to check out the character of guys, and them checking out the character of guys doesn't just happen in these 15-minute interviews that they have at the combine or even the informal interviews that they have at the combine. It happens throughout the whole draft process. And so if, there was immaturity concerns as early as December or probably earlier than that, they'll have constantly been checking up on Jalen Carter and seeing what's going on and getting to know him a lot better than we ever can. And then this is just something which obviously he's going to be asked about a lot. Measurements wise, he was 6'3", 314 pounds with 33.5-inch long arms, which for the Seahawks meets their supposed threshold. I mean, in an ideal world, he'd have 34-inch long arms. It doesn't really matter, especially with how he plays football. But yeah, the whether Seattle would take him, I'm not so sure. Given John Schneider in the combine, this draft cycle, he mentioned sort of being caught out with players a bit. Now he was talking more about pushing up certain players when they had a need at the position, but also character has been emphasized a lot by him and Pete Carroll, more than I think it had in the past. And so maybe this would dissuade Seattle from taking Carter. I'm not so sure. It's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, the whole idea, or the word maturity, is such a broad term, and so when McShay used that phrasing, like some maturity issues, that could have been, I mean, that could have just been shorthand for like, hey, he just did something really stupid that we're all going to find out about later
Yeah,
on, or
exactly.
and this might be like there are some prospects that kind of get like check all the boxes off of like he's mature, he's got his his head on straight, he does X, Y, and Z, and probably has done something, partaken in something once or twice, and nothing comes of it because nothing bad happened. And they got lucky. So maybe he did this, and this is as stupid as it was, and it is as harmful as it was, and simultaneously he could also be a good student. In the film room, he could be great at practice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, or maybe he also has other issues too that teams don't know about. So, I mean, I feel like as far as how Pete and John view it, it's probably related to all the other background that they supposedly do on players. But yeah, it also, with the last time they got burned with a situation like this, it was Malik McDowell, and that happened to be a motor vehicle related incident. This also being a motor vehicle related incident, they might just wash their hands of it altogether, go, nope, this is too familiar. Or maybe not. Maybe they weigh it against other things and they go, well, we think that he's totally fine with the other things. And as far as it relates to signaling future behavior, future decision making, because I think that's all they care about is trying to see if there's a theme of behavior as it relates to their football team, not like what judgments need to be made.
Yeah, absolutely. So the alternative, which we've already covered, and do check out the podcast that we did on Carter before we knew this news, Will Anderson Jr. and Tyree Wilson. But the next obvious alternative at number 5 overall, and maybe someone who will have gone now because other teams may well be cautious around Carter. Maybe the Chicago Bears do a trade down from number 1 overall from a quarterback. Needy team, and then say no to Carter, would be then Will Anderson Jr., the Alabama outside linebacker. He ran the 40-yard dash today after measuring in 6'3.5", 253 pounds, and 33 7/8 of an inch long arm. So that's tick, 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 tick for Seattle's perspective. And his 40 came in at 4.60 seconds with a 1.61 seconds 10-yard split. The 40's official, the 10-yard split, they don't update, but I'd assume, I mean, it's pretty damn good. And prospect comparison-wise, like profile-wise, athletically, that's like a kind of Khalil Mack, DeMarcus Ware type of build and testing. I mean, he didn't do any of the other testing, so you'd have to kind of wait for that to flesh out. But the junior, that kind of matches his the way he plays, this is sort of, we're going to be extrapolating a lot with this data. It's the combine. That's what we're here to do. But it kind of matches the way he plays, that he has a first step quickness. He syncs up the snap timing. Round the arc, he's more of a kind of power guy, not a pure speed rush. And he really likes to use his hands. And as he said to Pro Football Talk as well, he likes a cross chop. A forklift move, and he models his game after Nick Bosa. And he just comes across as a very impressive, mature, intelligent, just pure football player. And even like he was put in with the inside linebackers, the off-ball guys, and he was the best, like going through the kind of almost linebacker design drills, like pedal forward, pedal backwards, run the W, that kind of stuff. But Griff, testing wise, just we knew he wouldn't be the absolute fastest, but those are really good numbers.
Yeah, I think the best part about it is that nothing concerning happened. Like he didn't register a concerning number. Like those numbers are right in line with what he needs to be for him reaching his peak. Like would require yeah, I was, especially the 10-yard split, that was really encouraging. And I think really my favorite number of all those numbers was that he weighed in at 253, because he played at Alabama at 240, maybe 245. But the fact that he put on 8-10 pounds, just during this combine prep season, which is a short time frame to put on muscle, lean muscle, that was really encouraging to see that, because that's a guy that you want to see get even heavier. The fact that he put it on that easily is a good sign. And like just looking at his upper half, like there was a lot of room on that frame, especially for how, not to get too weird here, but how well developed he was in the lower half.
Yep, well done. Not too weird.
Yep. So also, and when you did the Khalil Mack side by side comparison, Khalil Mack has been playing 265, pushing 270, and he weighed in at 251. So it's just he's on a good track here. Also, like you've mentioned many times, he's only 21 years old. He's not 22, 23. Like he's just recently turned 21. So, yeah, I mean he needs to be a speed, strength, finesse guy, a speed, power, finesse guy. He's not a just blow up a set off the snap kind of guy. He just needs to be good enough in that area. He just needs to have good enough arc speed, and then his unreal play strength will take care of the rest. And if he could simply, considering that play style, you would think his strengths would compound even more if he continues to put on weight. So 253 is a good start for his rookie year, and we'll see where he ends up in his career, but hopefully he just keeps putting on the pounds. So that was an encouraging, a good, reassuring combine for Will Anderson, I think.
Yeah, passed jumped through all the hoops, all that stuff. Didn't have an error, like you said. Just perfectly on track to be a valid selection at 5 overall. Even though, you'd have liked Alabama to give him some more pure on the edge rush opportunities, but that's not his fault. Okay. Tyree Wilson, something we should have mentioned in the previous podcast we did on him, but he was unable to test because he had a fracture in his foot. But he did measure in at 6'6", 271 pounds with 35 and 5/8 of an inch long arms. So he's tall and long. We knew that. He's also big. He's kind of a tweener in a sense because he played outside linebacker, and we've seen him in a 2-point, but when he plays inside, his technique is pretty unrefined. Like he obviously hasn't worked on it too much in terms of how to take on a block and play in a way that the NFL would want him to play. So it's kind of a case of, oh, well, he's like a 4-3 sort of end, but then is he that in Seattle? Probably not. So Anyway, we've covered that. So now do you want to go do outside linebackers, Griff, or do you want to do like 5 techs?
But let's do the true outside linebackers first, I think.
Okay. So outside linebacker wise, there were a number of absolutely eye-popping testers. They're also kind of guys who you might not they've sort of the hype machine's gone crazy. So the first obvious one is Nolan Smith out of Georgia. He was 6'2", 238 pounds with 32 and 5/8 inch long arms. Now, even with linebackers getting lighter, 238 pounds is lighter than the Seahawks would like, and the arm length is below the 33-inch mark. But Smith ran a 4.39 second 40-yard dash with a 1.52 second 10-yard split, which is just crazy. And his vertical jump was 41.5 inches, and his broad jump was 10 for 8 inches. And I've seen people saying like he won't make it out of the first round. He might, which okay, that's cool. And he was the captain of Georgia's defense, I believe. But like, let's pump the brakes here.
Yeah. I mean, he's light, and he's a light edge whose best play in college was as a run defender. He doesn't have a lot of pure snaps rushing the passer, so as a result, he's raw there. But when you're raw technique wise, in addition to being really light, it's kind of hard to justify taking them in a first round. Now he does have flash plays where he shows off the get off the bend, the flexibility, stuff like that. But I mean, to me, all those things considered, that's the kind of guy that just screams like a late second, early third round pick that you get really excited about the possibility of him turning into something. But as of like right now, day one, he's not a contributor in the way that you hope he can be a contributor. I think that he's a really exciting like depth player. He's just an athlete. You could see him making just splash plays here and there. In the run game, like perimeter run game, screens, running stuff down, like pursuit when the quarterback scrambles and the play breaks down, like that sort of thing. Sure, making plays against the run, stout play. But as a pass rusher, I mean, he's got two huge question marks, and that's technique and play strength. Now that said, I mean, he plays strong for his size, but that's as a college player. Translating what he is right now to the NFL is just a bit much. So I can't fathom him being a first round pick at all. I mean, I wouldn't pick him in the second round even, unless you had like 5 second round picks, which Seattle very well might end day one going into day two with a lot of second round picks. So if you feel like you got your guys and you want to take a flyer, then okay, fine. But yeah, it's just we didn't get the 3-cone. Now I would imagine his 3-cone would have been really good, but I'm surprised he didn't run a 3-cone. I feel like that could only have helped him. I can't imagine him running a number that would have hurt him, or running a time that would have hurt him. So, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and so like fit in Seattle, it sounds like he'd be a mainly dropping outside linebacker type in the bear look. But like, if they're planning to run a lot of nickel 2-4, like he's a kind of juice off the bench pass rusher and then special teamer, right?
Right. No, I agree. I mean, that's
you can't really play him on early downs to set the edge against the run, even though that's his best stuff comes against the run. Because in a 2-4, like the spacing of that front, you have to be really stout. Like, I just don't think it works. And the arms aren't long.
He's an idea right now.
There you go. So when we talk about ideas, even with crazy athleticism, ideas are like round 2, and even then that seems a bit steep. The case can be made that Seattle took Boye Mafe, who at the combine I believe had 32 and 5/8 inch long arms. Anyway, they're under 33 inches. But if you remember the Senior Bowl, Mafe had 33 and 3/8 inch long arms. But they did mention that after they drafted him. But more importantly, Mafe was bigger, and like he was 260s. Like there is a difference there, and it's important, I think, to remind oneself of that. Ebiketie, who Seattle also like, he was lighter, but he had 34-inch long arms. Like there's always that kind of trade-off between guys. So Smith definitely interesting. I'll be watching him back again just to see what's what, but I'd be moderately surprised. Now, his Georgia teammate Griff, Robert Beal Jr., he
Yeah,
came in at 6'4", 247 pounds, 34 and 5/8 inch long arms. So better. Ran a 4.48 second 40-yard dash, 1.62 second 10-yard split, jumped 30 inches vertically, and 10'3" in the broad jump. So very good broad, and then really good 40-yard dash and 10-yard split.
yeah. And on,
How do you feel about Beal? Because I don't remember. He's
he
33, right?
Yeah, he's 33. That's a lot more intriguing to me because on top of all that, like 247 is an overwhelming size, but it kind of starts to meet the threshold of viability. On top of all those good numbers, I mean, he knows how to edge rush. Like he knows what he's doing.
Has a plan.
It's he has a plan. He understands. He has skills, technique. Like you said, he has a plan. He knows how to apply that over the course of a game, how to work tackles. It's just that he's not, any one of his traits isn't overwhelming. Like he has adequate play strength at the top of the arc, like riding his rips. Occasionally he'll get ridden off, but occasionally he'll win. He can work to the inside. If he gets a tackle to overset, he can routinely, he has different ways to get into, like, to defeat hands so that he can get into his rip with forklift moves, swipes, stuff like that. So he knows what he's doing. He's a guy that probably goes fourth, fifth round, but one of those guys that go in the fourth or fifth round who, think might have something. Now, actually, the 4.47 probably puts his ceiling at the fourth round. I don't see, or his floor. I don't see him going any lower than the fourth round. So maybe third or fourth round. But I think I think he could be a good depth pass rusher, kind of in the same vein as taking like Tyreek Smith last year, who we unfortunately haven't gotten to see. Now they're different types of edge rushers. They're both speed, but it's like the same idea of like, oh, hey, he could be something, like a good depth piece. So, and you need those guys because
tested better than Smith as well. Not that Smith tested
much
bad.
better.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So,
I am intrigued by that.
so 509 Adventures has asked, what did Bruce Irvin weigh when he came out? Which is a good question because Bruce is like, what pick was it? 15, higher than that.
Yeah, he was 242, I think.
He was 6'2", 245 pounds, so heavier, but also big time crucial, 33 and 3/8 of an inch long arms. And he still ran a 4.5 seconds 40 and had a crazy 6.7 seconds 3 cone, 4.03 seconds short shuttle. The other thing of Bruce as well is college production wise, he had 22.5 sacks over just 2 years, which was all just running around guys, but like it's still sacks. Like, so he had production on top of that and was young. So that kind of gives you an idea of what a first round pick looks like. Like, he was talked up as like one of the best in the class, and I don't think Nolan Smith tape wise is that. Like, he testing, he's done really well for himself, but he's not. As Griff said, he's more an idea, and that's largely because of his athleticism and then some of the flashes against the run. Now, there's 3 other guys who ran the 40 and had long arms. So just say if these guys stand out to you, Griff. So DJ Johnson of Oregon, 6'4", 260 pounds, 33.25 inch arms, 4.49 seconds 40 with a 1.59 seconds 10-yard split, 32-inch vertical jump, and 9'2" broad jump.
Never heard of him until just now. Which
There you go.
Shame on me. Maybe I should look into him, but
he may be more of like a interior guy. Actually, I'm not so sure, but we'll have to check him out. Again, that's what the combine's good for. It makes you revisit guys, makes you learn about guys. We'll have some of that for the interior, the defensive line too. Then Yaya Diaby out of Louisville. Now, he was at the Senior Bowl, and
I
looks
remember
more
him.
like a 5 tech to me.
Yeah, he didn't really separate himself from what I remember at the Senior Bowl.
But he tested crazy. So he's 6'3", 263 pounds, 33 and 7/8 inch long arms. He ran a 4.51 seconds 40 with a 1.56 seconds 10-yard split, jumped 37 inches vertically and 10 foot in the broad. So impressive, but probably something to rewatch. I think he is still more of a 5 tech that the broadcast said outside linebacker. So, and then finally, Griff, someone we've talked about before, Derek Hall out of Auburn. Now, he skipped the agility drills, which I think were going to be the bigger thing for him because he's quite
Right.
a sort of linear player. And he was 6'3", 254 pounds, 34.5-inch long arms. Another guy who's at the Senior Bowl. He ran a 4.55 second 40 with 1.59 seconds 10-yard split. Jumped 33.5 inches vertically and a 10-foot 7-inch broad jump.
Yeah, I think those are decent numbers for him. They kind of confirm the tape fairly well, I think. I mean, the 10-yard split especially is really that one took me by surprise. But he was a player who, of all the edges that are not first rounders, he's the only guy that doesn't have a glaring like red flag as a prospect, like player, not like character, but like with we got BJ Ojolari, who, well, I should say after BJ Ojolari. So like you're talking like, like height, length, weight, and then, tape, and then how they perform at the combine. Like BJ Ojolari is the only guy that feels like a run-of-the-mill classic second rounder you don't have a huge question mark about. It's just he checks off a lot of boxes. He just doesn't necessarily check off a bunch of boxes super high, otherwise he'd be a first rounder. But like you can see the vision with him. Derek Hall is kind of like the third round equivalent of that to me. I feel like he has, good power. He has decent get off. He has good play strength. I think even if he doesn't have great agility, he knows how to like move efficiently, so he can still find ways to win outside on tackles. It's just, again, he doesn't check them off at a super, fantastic level. Therefore, I mean, he's probably a third rounder, but that 40-yard dash might have teams think twice. Also, he's also 21. So there are some other players that are similarly styled as him, like KJ Henry, Byron Young, but those guys are like 24, 25 years old. So Derek Hall just kind of has a nice resume in terms of there's not some glaring aspect that gives you pause. You're just maybe not super excited about him. But that contrast with other guys that we'll talk about who have some exciting traits, but then some really huge drawbacks, like we talked about with Nolan Smith. Will McDonald is kind of the same. A lot of things going for him, but some things are working against him. Derek Hall doesn't have a lot of things going against him. He just doesn't necessarily have a trait that excites you in particular. But I mean, I liked him as a player too. Watching his tape, he just feels like a third rounder to me who could, maybe be a contributor.
Yeah. So you mentioned Will McDonald. He only did 2 drills, but he, came in similar size to the Senior Bowl. 6'4", 239 pounds, 34.78-inch long arms, so slightly lighter than Seattle would like. He jumped 36 inches in the vertical, very impressive, and 11 foot in the broad, even more impressive. But no 40 times, so when we've sort of talked about him already. And then the other guy, which was really intriguing to me because he's a junior, so we hadn't got any Senior Bowl or All-Star game measurements, is Kansas State outside linebacker Felix Anyaduke Uzoma, who 6'3", 255 pounds with 33.5-inch long arms. And I quickly watched some of his stuff, and he's intense. He is getting after it. He's beating, they'll be in drop 8, and so 3-man rush. He'll get doubled, like the way college pass protection works as well, and he'll beat doubles. But the way he pulls himself around corners with like a cross rip and push pull, and just sets everything up with a stab down the middle with his long arm as his sort of starting point. Really, really impressive. And then hearing him interviewed as well, he seems really kind of cerebral. He thinks he's clearly thought a lot about football and his game and what he needs to work on. Said how, he needed to work on his bend coming in. Talks about his plan of attack, and he looks really, again, not being weird, he's really thick in like the butt and the foot and the thighs, and he looks larger than his frame. So
I know. I was surprised he was only 255. I thought he'd be 260, 265.
So, like, size-wise, you think, okay, well, that's just an outside linebacker. But then the way Kansas State played him was pretty much as like a 5 tech in odd spacing. So, like, 0 on the outside shoulder of a tackle basically every time. And
Yeah.
then base downs, he was like in a 4 down kind of deal where he's
Right.
more like at the end, 4-3
Mhm.
end. So it's like you haven't really seen him in coverage. And he also didn't do any of the testing, which is a shame. But just those measurements, it's nice to have those again, the boxes ticked, and I eagerly
Yeah.
await his pro day. He's really kind of gets after it ferocious, and someone SOS pressure percentage numbers aren't out yet, but I'd expect him to be high. Like he looks like a real interesting one.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, he's kind of the same. Again, not comparing them like stylistically, but although there is some overlap, kind of the same idea as Ojulari in this class, where okay, another like you probably put him right up there with Ojulari, stack them however you want, but I would tier them together like an edge that kind of checks off a lot of boxes and doesn't have a lot of like glaring like I don't know about this. It's just really more how do you rate the stuff he does do well. Maybe fringe first, early second kind of player. Like that's a legit option for them. Um, yeah, I think you said he talked about his bend. That definitely shows up on tape. He's a little stiff at the top of the rush, but he has. I mean, there are lots of edge rushers in the NFL that are stiff at the top of the rush that get sacks. So
Yeah, there's a reason that when there is someone who isn't, that they go, they're like
top,
guaranteed
yeah,
high because it's rare. Like it's not a absolute to necessity to have that, and there's only so many people who can do it. So yeah.
yeah. So
Um,
he's another guy that if that can know actually make you interested. If he's there at 37 or whatever their pick is, or if they trade back into the late 20s somehow and he's
yeah.
there.
And so you mentioned Ojulari. I was interested to see him test. He didn't, but he was 6'2". He was at the Senior Bowl, right? Am I wrong on
Ye
that?
um, I think so.
Bad podcasting here. Bad
Yeah.
podcast. No, he's a junior, so no, he wasn't. So yeah, we got some confirmation that he's good for size. He's 6'2", 248 pounds, 34 and a quarter inch long arms. So semi tick, and we'll have to wait for his pro day. Now, that's kind of the edge rusher's address. Like Byron Young ran really fast, but his arms are under 33 inches. So I guess, Griff, we can move on to the absolute combine star, which again, it was kind of rumored that this would happen. We spoke about this in the pre-podcast segment. But let me get up the numbers. Bad podcasting again. Bad podcasting again. Yeah, so Northwestern's Aditomi wa Adibare was unbelievable. Like truly generational kind of deal, which is always cool when that happens. And this is a guy who was at the Senior Bowl and he popped out to us. So he's 6'2", which is like the one thing keeping him from like basically getting a 10, because then
Yeah.
he was 282 pounds. He had a vertical jump of 37.5 inches, a broad jump of 10'5" a 40-yard dash this is at 282 pounds of 4.89 seconds, and a 1.61 second 10-yard split, which is just stupid, like just absolutely stupid. And he was
Yeah.
moving. He's so dense. You could see that kind of at the Senior Bowl. You could see him playing with heavy hands, and he was just wrecking centers when, as a 3 tech, he was not doubled or was doubled. Sorry. So then he went to the center and pushed him in the A gap, as you meant to do in 4-down rush spacing. But this was like just on a different level, and I believe Bruce Feldman said that he'd test really well. But like, this is good enough, I think, to make him a first-round pick. Like for comparison's sake, and Trevor Sycamore, I think it was, tweeted this out. Yes. So he had a faster 10-yard and 40-yard dash times than Trayvon Walker, but he also obviously weighed 10 pounds heavier.
Yeah,
which
it's insanity. I mean,
now
it's insane numbers.
now the tape obviously is not on a Walker level, and it's not on a Walker level defense or like resume in terms of success and production, but like the numbers are just crazy, like just absolutely crazy. And like the company he's in is Rashawn Gary is like the worst case scenario in terms of the two. There's two other players who've achieved what he did, and it's Rashawn Gary, and then let me find the other one. But and JJ Watt. So
I mean, he did separate himself at the Senior Bowl. It was him and Benton and maybe
yeah,
Carl Brooks were the three guys on the defensive line, period, on the interior especially, but defensive line period, maybe with the addition of Will McDonald, that were making plays. And his play strength was insane. I mean, he could boost bull rushing guys. He didn't get off blocks that well from what I remember, but again, I haven't watched any Northwestern yet, so that's what matters. But he has been a productive college player dating back to his sophomore year. So I mean, he gets into the backfield, but like trying to define what he is, because 282 pounds is such an odd place to be in for a defensive lineman. I mean, really at either spot of the line of scrimmage, because most guys are either, if you're 282 pounds, like at 6'2", like that's just, are you an oversized edge or an undersized tackle? But with his athletic traits, he probably carries the weight well enough to be able to live on the edge and then maybe kick in and play a nickel 3 technique type thing. But maybe does he actually have the ability to be an early down 3 technique 4-eye, because we talk about all these big ends, these flexible guys, but just because they're big doesn't mean they can actually hold up that well on the inside. Like Michael Bennett is so rare. So if at 282 pounds he can actually live in there, that would make him really interesting, especially if he's a good pass rusher, because obviously that's, you'd hope with that degree of explosiveness he can get after the passer. And then the question from there is, where does he fit on rundowns and mix downs, so that you can actually see the benefits of his pass rush when they do indeed pass on those downs. So yeah, but he's definitely that's definitely ringing alarm bells in the right direction there.
yeah. So you said his production was better than I thought.
So the tackle for losses. So his
All
true
right.
sophomore year, 6 tackles for loss, 8.5 junior year, 9 his senior year, and then the sacks, he has 12.5 career sacks. So I mean,
Yeah,
TFL's,
five sacks in 2022.
and he's probably playing inside, where I mean, sacks are such a dubious stat anyway, especially for like interior pass rushers,
College, yeah.
yeah, at college especially. Like it's just there's so much going on there. The ball in some schemes comes out so quick. You're asked to do different things on 3rd and long, 2nd and longs. They don't really always let their guys get after it. So there's so many games going up front to steal gaps for the run. But even if they still pass on those downs, so like it's just such a specialized thing. That's why TFLs actually project toward NFL sacks more than college sacks do. So the fact that he's getting in the backfield and he was doing so early in his career from a production standpoint and precedence there, those are good signs. So I'd like to see him play,
Yeah.
actually watch him play.
Yeah, no. And again, like the Senior Bowl, you'd be watching like I'd be watching a cornerback, and suddenly I'd realize that the center or even a guard had been bull rushed into the quarterback's lap by someone moving a lot quicker than and more powerfully than everyone else. And so that immediately piques your interest. And now it's like, okay, this is interesting. And he's not the only player who of that kind of he is kind of the only player of the 280. He's listed on Northwestern's website as well as 280 pounds. So he's been at this kind of playing weight for a while. He is the most tweenery of them. But like, if you're saying he's gonna be more outside, where you kind of like the idea of him being able to have a bit more space to then really accelerate into his tools rather than being in closer confines and being inside. But there are a lot of other guys who, you think their best foot will come in that kind of 5 tech role, which Seattle does or did use last year in the base stuff, like they ended the year after much kind of umming and ahhing and trying to find something which works, basically running base underfronts, and that requires a 5 technique. Who now that was partly to fit their personnel, but if you're going to take a guy who you think's really good in the draft, then fit the front that guy, and then
Right.
in theory, in nickel, they can just be an edge, and you play 2-4-5. They probably can't play in the bear stuff. Well, maybe a 280-pounder can, but a guy like Lucas Van Ness is an interesting prospect. So coming out of Iowa, never started, which is something they kept saying on the broadcast. I've heard like so many times because Iowa doesn't play underclassmen, which is, you do you Iowa. It's kind of weird. Redshirt sophomore, but he was 6'5", 272 pounds with 34-inch long arms, and his testing was pretty crazy. You sort of become
Insane.
desensitized to the numbers because of how many times you've read them out, but like it is insane. 4.58 seconds 40, 1.64 seconds 10-yard split, 31-inch vertical jump, 9-foot 10-inch broad jump. But the real impressive stuff was a 7.02 seconds 3-cone, and then a 4.32 second short shuttle, which that 3-cone in particular at 272 pounds, 6'5", is nuts.
It's like the holy grail of like edge testing. So there are guys 250 that are running 7.15, 7.2, 7.33 cones. They're still good players. The fact that he almost ran sub 7 at 270 is absurd. And he also has the play streak. Now it's funny though, because we were talking about it before we hit record tonight. On tape, he's purely a linear player. I mean, straight down the middle, wants to bull rush you. But the fact that he has this ability to flex a little bit, to bend a little bit, to change direction and drop his hips, drop his pads and stuff, and be flexible just in his upper half and lower half is a really good sign as it relates to his potential. But he also is, I think he has a high floor, but his ceiling is still very much theoretical, because it's not like you saw the signs on tape. It's purely like he needs to develop. He has the traits, but the skills are entirely undeveloped there. So it's like some guys are not raw, they're just inexperienced to apply what skills they have. He's both raw and inexperienced whenever it comes to this. Now, but that said, is day one bull rush, yeah, I'll probably walk back a tackle, every so often, every game his rookie year. But you're not just drafting him for that, you're drafting him for what he could be on top of that.
Yeah, and with his testing, there's it's hard not to see that being like a top 20 type of dude, right? If not higher.
Yeah, but I still don't know how I feel about, because like he's also, for the scheme, he's not an easy fit. Like you can make it work, but I only like taking a guy in the first round period who has his like height, weight, speed makeup, but is also just a really skilled player, because then you're kind of willing to make the schematic accommodations for him. But he's not George Karlaftis like we talked about last year, who I wouldn't care that he is an odd fit. Like, just fit him in, I don't care, it's worth it, because he's such a complete prospect.
So for comparison's sake, Trayvon Walker had a 6.89 seconds 3-cone time, which is like, that's a pretty good, it's a really good time. And, he's kind of getting to that spot. So again, the kind of Walker model recurring. Now, 5 tech wise, are there any other guys that we should be talking about?
Well, an interesting one is the USC guy, Tui Pelotu.
Yeah. So that was a shocker, right? Because you thought he'd be bigger than that. I did. He was actually, I think, grouped with the. Oh no, he was grouped with the edges, but he came in at 266 pounds, and this is a guy who, in the league, you just think, okay, he's a 3 tech, right? Like, he's a rush 3. He'd be sort of like 285, 90. Is that what you expected?
I thought he'd probably be 280 for the combine. Like I thought he was playing 285, 290, and he'd show up 280 for the combine, maybe a little lighter than that. But I would not have expected anything in the 260s.
Yeah, and you hope he's okay and that there's like no health thing. Remember last year we had your infamous incident with Miles
Majay
Sanders,
Sanders.
my
Yeah.
Jay Sanders. Sorry.
Yeah. Apologies to Majay.
Yeah, we can just keep insulting him now. Well, I did. Anyway, moving on. Yeah. So, but if all things are like that, there are sometimes cases that guys are just much lighter. Like USC had him listed at 290 pounds, so we're not like off for thinking that. But he also had only 32 and a quarter inch long arms, which is shorter than Seattle would like. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like a double whammy.
So him weighing 266 kind of takes him out of the Michael Bennett concept and more of the George Karlaftis concept because he knows how to rush the edge. He knows how to do it. It's just what his traits allow him to do it in the NFL. I mean, he moved really well at whatever weight he was playing the past 2-3 years. For that, for his composition. And the whole idea was, well, that translates to the inside really well. And he probably can't rush that much on the outside, but like Michael Bennett could still rush on the outside in the NFL. He was just much better relative to other pass rushers as a 3 technique, but you got all the benefits of his elite run defense. I think Thule could be a very good run defender, especially on the outside. So you can play him outside when you need to, kick him in the inside when you need to. There's very few reps, like getting a true 3 technique reps, but he looks very good in them, very natural and comfortable. So, but at 266, that kind of takes him out of the idea of him being more of a, you can't play him at 3 technique on mixed downs. You can do it on like late downs, like 3rd and long, 2nd and 12 after tackle for loss, right? But he can't be like you can't BS with him as a 3 technique in bare base like you could even Rasheem Green in a pinch, who was a true 275. So this is more the Karlaftis range where he's now no longer a big end and just like an end that is big or an edge that is big. So does that mean he's an outside linebacker in a 3-4? You might have to mess around with that if you like him enough as an edge rusher. But so this kind of redefines his play style, him being 266. So I like him a lot. So I still wouldn't care if Seattle would draft him. I just would prefer it to see if he's one of the fallers in the early 2nd round. The beauty of it is, though, is if they get whoever they view as their guy in the top 10, then everything else is gravy as far as who is taken where after that at defensive line. So everyone else is just the cherry on top because, yeah, I don't know.
Yep. And interesting as well that when you go on his when you try and look up the results, you have to. It's not like listed under his position. You have to search for him, like as though he's been removed from the database. Tinfoil hat. But
Interesting.
yeah, that he didn't do any of the other testing as far as this is saying. So there you go. Right, defensive tackles. Seeing as we're sort of moving into that territory, Kalijah Cansey is the obvious standout. He had a great day in terms of his runs. He ran a 4.67 seconds 40 at 6'1", 281 pounds, and a 1.64 seconds 10-yard split, which is nuts. But he has 30 and 5/8 of an inch long arms, which, because he went to Pitt, there's always like, oh, he's undersized. Aaron Donald went to Pitt and was undersized and was also very quick, explosive. So maybe Cansey could be that, but like that arm length is pretty crazy. And Griff, before he'd run, but you'd seen the numbers of his just pure measurements. You said he couldn't play. He didn't say that. That's straight up slander. No, you said you couldn't draft him in the 1st round.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, a lot of teams won't because there's only 8 other guys who've had arms shorter than that, I believe, and they've all amounted to nothing. So
the arm length is the nail in the coffin for being confident about him as an early down player on the interior. I mean, it just can't happen. And I wouldn't ask him to put on weight. I would hope that he'd stay the way he is. And you take him and you let him fall, take him where he lands, and then in the draft, and then just use him as a fun situational pass rusher, and maybe play around with him as an early down edge even. Again, like it would be a lot easier if he went to an even team or a 4-down team. He probably could play the classic Michael Bennett, Red Bryant 5-tech role. Just because he's still, he still weighs 280 pounds. He's strong. Play strength
And
isn't a
it's not
problem
like he
relative
doesn't
to his
know.
weight.
It's not like he doesn't know he has short arms. Like he has been productive with short arms. It's just a
Yeah,
different level in the NFL, especially when he's been rushing on the interior against guards who are not as NFL level for dealing with quickness from
right.
the inside. Like,
Like he is extremely fun as a pass rusher. It's just, how violent. Now, so when they go 2-4-5, he can hand in the dirt, standing up doesn't matter because they're not dropping him. He could absolutely play on the edge there. I would think. Like,
so you're
why couldn't he?
well because you have to be able to set the edge though.
He can set the edge. Because he has to strike first. He's not using his. He has to get into the
Okay.
block. He's
Hmm.
resetting the line of scrimmage. He's not holding ground. He's taking ground.
It sounds a bit like a luxury pick.
It's absolutely a luxury pick, and that's why he cannot be the first defensive lineman they take in the draft. He has to come after some more prudent choices.
It sounds also a bit like Seattle of old, perhaps. But anyway,
There's no way they draft him with those arms. Especially, there's no way.
no, they're so anti what they've done. Anyway, so a guy who I was unfamiliar with his game, but I will be watching, and I believe people who said Redmond is a below average athlete will also be rewatching. Is Jalen Redmond, Oklahoma defensive tackle. So he was 6'2", 291 pounds. Now his arm length was 32 and 5/8 of an inch, which is below that 33-inch or even 34-inch mold that the Seahawks like. But he jumped 34.5 inches vertically, which was first amongst all defensive linemen. He had a 9'8" broad jump, which again was first among defensive linemen. And he had a 4.81 seconds 40-yard dash with a 1.72 seconds 10-yard split. So he was absolutely moving. His official, and also his 3-cone, he decided to run that 7.30 seconds, which it's not great, but it was still first among his group. And he also did a 4.51 second short shuttle, which again, not great, but it was first among his group. Now, a lot of the guys decided not to run the 3-cone, but I hadn't really encountered Redmond before. I went and watched him very quickly, and it's the classic case of a Big 12 defense. They're playing him as more like a head up nose, I think, to try and get some quickness there and some run throughs and all that stuff. But like realistically in the NFL, he's probably more like I don't know what he is. Maybe he could. I need to watch more. Maybe he could be like a 5-tech, like a big end type. Maybe he's like a 3-tech who needs to bulk up a bit. I don't know. It's something that I need to delve deeper into because those numbers are like very, very interesting.
Yeah. So I don't remember. I remember him flashing when watching, like
Yeah.
Nick Benito and stuff.
Well, even Trey Brown.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, even
So
Trey Brown, he'd flash with him
interesting.
because
So
he
yeah,
missed he because his story is he missed 2020. I think he opted out because of COVID, and he had a respiratory thing that he was dealing with, so he had dealt with, so he didn't want to risk it.
interesting. Okay. So yeah, so he was. And what I vaguely remember is him just getting into the backfield.
Yeah,
So that's definitely worth a look to look at his last year in college and see if he's progressed. Because I didn't think like, oh, this guy's a must. I'm just like, okay, here's a guy on their line that makes some plays, which when you're watching one guy, someone else always pops. But um, I didn't make much of it beyond that. I just remember like, okay, yeah, he's one of their guys. So yeah, he's definitely someone, yeah, 5th-year senior. He's definitely someone though that you want to see more of. So with those numbers, those numbers are insane. not all these guys can go in the second round. So someone with some aspect of their entire prospect profile being really exciting is going to fall. So it'd be fun to take a flyer on one of these dudes after you've kind of taken care of business in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And so, talking of flyers, and this guy may have tested himself beyond that kind of flyer territory, or the sort of later flyer territory that you're talking about. But uh, I believe it's Gervon Dexter Senior, or maybe it's Jervon. Sorry, I should have got that right. I'll go with Gervon.
probably a hard G. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. So 4.88 seconds 40-yard dash, 1.81 seconds 10-yard split, 31 inches vertical, 9-foot 2-inch broad jump, 7.5 seconds 3-cone, which isn't the best, but the 3-cone isn't. But the rest is very impressive given he's 6'6", 310 pounds, and he's only a junior. Now, he does just have 32.25-inch arms, which, again, if they were 33 inches, then we're talking about like serious, like, interesting cat. But like the fact that he's that tall and he's tested this well and he's big, like, because a lot of these guys came in for sort of 290 range, but he's already come in at the size and shown he has the stuff to do. And yeah, I'd be really interested in sort of watching his game more. I believe that from what I recall of Florida's defense, is quite a lot of two gapping asked of those dudes. So have to see, maybe that translates to Seattle's mirror stepping style. I'm not so sure.
Yeah, interesting. Another guy to dive into. Did you have a favorite of any of these guys?
It was nice to
the
see
non-obvious
Keanu
guys.
Benton
Oh
from
yeah, Benton.
Wisconsin. He,
He's good.
6'4", 309 pounds, 33 and 7/8 of an inch long arms. So tick, 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 really. 5.13 seconds 40 with a 179 seconds 10-yard split, 29.5-inch vertical jump, 9-foot 3-inch board jump. Like, he moves better than those numbers, but those numbers aren't bad. They're like above average. He also had a decent senior bowl, as you said, Griff, and that's sort of like a potentially mid-round, maybe higher than that, actually. You know, plug and play, you'd think, one tech, three tech,
Yeah.
but Seattle doesn't really
Yeah.
do that anymore. So they'd have to work that out. But that was an interesting one to me. How about you?
Yeah, I like Benton a lot. He's a legit dude. He's like the round 2 version of Ojulari and Felix and Nudike Uzoma. Like, he's a good player. He's just nothing about him can, ascend him into the first round. But there are guys taken second and third round, a defensive tackle that through, hitting thresholds and then with good technique and knowing what they're doing become really good players. So he's absolutely a candidate for that type of player. It was disappointing that Mozzie Smith didn't test because he's after Jalen Carter, he is absolutely the most impressive athlete all together, like including like size, like Adebore obviously is 282 pounds, right? So and like a tweener. So like if Mozzie Smith is crazy athlete, hopefully he runs his pro day, which I'm sure he will.
Because he was 6'3", 323 pounds with 33 and 3/4 inch long arms. So like he's got those size measurables.
Yeah.
Maybe he slims down slightly for his pro day.
The fact that he's a legit 320 pounds moving the way he does on the field is insane.
Yeah, it is crazy.
There are some problems with this game, but he kind of cleaned them up, and we'll really dive into him.
Yes,
later on.
I've only watched 2 of his games, but what I saw was inconsistency. But did you feel he got more consistent as the year went on, or was it always just there was never quite getting it down?
He does. So yeah, he does get better as the year goes on. He still lacks, I think, a natural anchor. He's better when he's moving forward, which can be a little bit of a concern. Like, he doesn't take on doubles well even toward the end of the year, but he does get a lot better when he can land his hands first and come out firing out of his stance. Like, he'll win the block. If he wins the block early, he doesn't lose. And he's so active with his feet. He moves down the line really well. Occasionally he'll get blown off the ball in a one-on-one, but he'll recover immediately just because he's such a crazy athlete. Kind of reminds me a little bit of like a Taba Rubin would lose out of his stance a lot, but he'd still be right at the line of scrimmage by the end of the play. Mozzie Smith is many more things than a Taba Rubin, but it kind of reminded me of that with like you put like a jetpack on a Taba Rubin. But so his highlight plays are so staggeringly impressive. You almost wonder if like what just happened actually happened. Like I'm not even kidding. It's insane.
It's like almost sped up. I
Yeah,
wondered if my
it's like
video
sped up.
file was like broken or been
Like I
edited.
had to double check. Like, is he really playing OSU right now? Isn't that center like going to be drafted in the 3rd round or something? Like, and
Right.
it's insanity. So I don't know how. So his lack of sack production too. Not to dwell on Mozzie too long is fake. It's he should have had like 8 sacks this
Right,
year.
like in the NFL, you think, with consistent edges,
Yeah,
and that should be, and it's also just random bad luck.
it's just randomness. Like he was
Yeah,
just on the bad side of variance. Really, it was kind of weird.
yeah, variance. There you go. Yeah. So
Variance is the fancy word for randomness, by the way.
no, I like that though. It's very fancy and lovely. I will add variance to vary my vocabulary. So
There you go.
Brian Breesy from Clemson, a guy who, Griff, you were not a fan of. But you'll be
Apparent,
pleased.
apparently, I need to watch his last
Well,
year's tape,
maybe not,
2021.
because he had 32.5-inch long arms.
Uh, he's a guy that doesn't like engaging blocks. I don't understand it. He just wants to swim everybody or win with speed. It's bizarre. So maybe I need to watch his 2021 tape. There's probably more going on there. So, but he is I mean, he still had a really good 40-yard dash. He still moves really well. I feel like that's something with him that he probably still have to draft early just as a rule. But I don't know if that's if Seattle if the Seahawks can afford to take that kind of player when they have to nail one of these picks. It's like if they didn't have as many needs, if they weren't so thirsty for an elite player, I would be okay with taking Brzee like at 20 or something, for example. If they don't take if say their first pick is a trade back and then go receiver or something, I want to be against it. But I almost at the point with Brzee where I just wouldn't draft him. I would just let some other team find out with him. I don't want
Yeah.
to be the team to find out. So
And he did deal with like a lot of medical stuff last year, which obviously impacted his game. And tragically, the family also went through the death of Reese's younger sister, who passed away from brain cancer at the age of 15. So, I mean, it's just like sounds like a nightmarish last year. And apparently, the tape before this past year, where he missed most of it, was more impressive. But then, when you say that, when you say that he doesn't take on blocks, like that's not very, which you said right at the start, that's not very Seattle-y. But testing wise, 4.86 seconds, 40, 298 pounds with a 1.71 second 10-yard split is very impressive. So it sounds like, though, you're scared of taking a risk. And Seattle stressed that they just want to take good football players. They don't really want to worry about need. They just want to take the best football player there. And they've said that a lot more than I think they used to say that sort of stuff. So there you go. Maybe that's not Breesy. So the other thing, Griff, was a guy who had popped on tape for you a bit. Baylor defensive lineman Siaki Ika, or is it?
oh yeah, I can't believe we haven't talked about him yet.
He was another disappointment. So
Yeah.
First of all, 6'3", 335 pounds with 32 and 3/8 of an inch long arms. But like he had an all-time bad combine, like really bad. And you don't want to belabor on this too much, but it does matter.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, tape does come first, but like and he is a big guy, but He was
It,
very slow and very slow
you,
in the agility.
yeah, it shocked me. I thought he would have a good combine as nose tackles go because he plays explosive for 350. He plays fast for 350. He moves really well for 350. Now that might be an optical illusion where he's so coordinated and he knows like how to move, like how to run around, that it makes him look faster than he is. Like maybe he's just so efficient with his footwork. He has such
Yeah,
great balance. Whatever speed he does have, he can access it
maybe he
whenever
needs
he needs
pads
to.
on.
Yeah, maybe he just needs to like smell blood in the water because I mean there are a few guys that move that way on tape. Like we can contrast him last year with not obviously not Jordan Davis. He's not Jordan Davis level by any stretch, but who is the Connecticut nose tackle that was taken? Um Man, what was his name? I think the Ravens took him.
Not Milton Davis, was it?
No,
No.
no, 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 no. Who is
Um,
this guy?
Chris Jones? No.
Travis Jones.
Travis
Travis
Jones.
Jones.
Travis Jones. Yeah, there you go.
Travis Jones is an example of a huge human being nose tackle, really strong, good anchor who can't move, but is still a valuable player. Like what I just described is still a valuable player in the NFL. Siaki is way more than that, at least on tape, as far as what he can do on the field, what he does for the Baylor defense. Uh, so, so that combine baffles me. Maybe he was ill. Maybe he's just a bad, maybe he's not a workout warrior or something. But like, I don't know,
Yeah,
man.
it's one of those to maybe the pro day suddenly it all just comes alive a bit more.
Hopefully,
But like sometimes players do test bad and pan out, especially if the tape's good. Like well, different position, but Orlando Brown, a very famous example of that.
right, right,
So, but again, just the whole point of this is, yeah, tape is important, but like when you can suddenly start filtering out, like there's been no player worse than this, or there's only been 3 players worse than this, and they've all done nothing in the league. That's when it starts to matter a bit more. It's also nice for revisiting guys and being introduced to guys, and also just confirming what you've seen as well. So that's probably a case of maybe you revisit his film, but also you just anxiously wait for his pro day. Right. Inside linebackers. Now, going in, I think we're pretty clear that this wasn't going to be that good a class. And testing wise, it didn't turn out that great. So, Dayan Henley out of Washington State, he came in at 225 pounds, which was 5 pounds lighter than his weight at the Senior Bowl. He's 6'1", 33-inch long arms. He did run a 4.54 seconds 40 and a 1.55 seconds 10-yard split, jumped 35 inches vertically and 10 foot 5 inches in the broad, didn't do the agility drills. I mean, that is very good speed. I thought he'd be 4.6 speed, so that's faster. But then if he's 5 pounds lighter. Anyway, he's an intriguing option as like a coverage dude, like man to man, and the stuff he shows off and his receiver background that was just dominant at the Senior Bowl to a level I hadn't seen before. Zone, I think, needs a lot of work. I don't really think Washington State coached them in the way that translates to the NFL zone drop wise. And so he'll have to pick all of that up. But he's like basically in Seattle, he'd fit the scheme. It's sort of what they want to do. It would be like adding another kind of, you've described it as adding another Cody Barton type, or it's kind of like a Baby Brooks kind of type, but he's almost like he's so light. It's like, is he like a sub package dude? Should you just put a safety there? Like in an ideal world, you just play Jamal Adams, but Jamal Adams' health is a question mark. So Henry's definitely an interesting option, but and Test, not a terrible day for him. Like, would you have liked him to be 235 pounds? Heck yeah. Then suddenly you're like, wow, that's good. And it sounds ridiculous
yeah.
to be talking about 10 pounds like this, but it all does go into the equation.
The 20-yard shuttle will matter a lot too. I think. I don't know. I don't know if we got that from him.
No, but he should be good at that because like the way he breaks down at the top of routes and
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, but then the other thing is as well, there was occasional false steps coming out of his own drop, which to me was more just like or not false steps. That's such a scouting word, but like added steps because he's not taking small enough steps. But I don't necessarily think that's an agility issue. I think it's more like a comfort with the technique issue. But anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
so do you have anything more on Henley Griff?
No, I think that whatever concerns there might be in the run game related to his size don't have to be that much of a concern for the same reasons why they don't have to be concerned for Barton, because I would point to maximizing how they improving like how they apply their scheme more, like that can clean up the issues there, or a good chunk of it, and then you could enjoy the benefits of the pass coverage. So I mean, I do think he does move well downfield. I do think he can cover, and the will they're like more is put on the mic in terms of being able to do everything the way that they align their scheme now. The will doesn't have to do quite as much, or doesn't have to do quite as much, depending on how they align their fronts. So
Do you remember when Channing Tindall came in at almost 6'2", 230 pounds and ran a 4.47 40 and jumped 42 inches and 129 meters?
because you would take Tyndall over Henley, right?
Yeah, and where did
Right.
Tyndall go in the draft?
Right. He was
Because
what, round?
Henley as well. Like if you watch the Washington State stuff, he's like a sub-package player. Like they didn't use him on early downs, which is mainly probably a size thing. But like he was out in space, like an apex kind of dude. Bit like how Brooks was used in 2016-17. Basically, how
Yeah.
light linebackers are used in these types of schemes.
I don't understand why they didn't take a linebacker last year.
No, that is bizarre. Almost
don't
as
get
though
it.
they had too much faith in Joel Igwebunwe. Iggy.
But even then, it's like even if Cody Barton did
Because
everything
that was a
they could
1 year
have,
deal, right?
yeah, that too. And even if and Barton only having 1 year left, it's I don't.
Be more proactive. The other thing with Barton is he was 237 pounds and he ran a 4.64 second 40, which isn't terrible. His arms though were 31 and 7/8 for an inch, so
Yeah,
short.
he had a good 3 cone and a good 20-yard
He
split,
did,
good
yeah.
20-yard shuttle.
Yeah.
Like that's why that shows up on tape and coverage.
Yeah.
So
an intriguing chess piece in all of this is Clemson linebacker Trenton Simpson, who ran 6'2", 235 pounds, ran a blistering 4.3 seconds 40 and a 1.55 seconds 10-yard split. He had 32 and 3/8 through an inch long arm, so smaller than Seattle would like, but he's probably like he's got the size, speed, height, weight to. He's gonna be probably the first linebacker off the board, even though like his fit is like I'm not I need to watch more of him. But like I believe how Venables used him in 2021 before he left is more kind of what like his peak could be, like as a blitzing tool, and then I don't know what his coverage is like. But he's like traitsy and he should have range and athleticism, so yeah. Interested to watch him, I'd say.
yeah.
Okay. And then the final guy that stood out to me is Shaka Hayward out of Duke. So this is purely I need to watch, but 6'3", 34-inch long arms, 235 pounds, 4.53 second 40, 1.54 second 10-yard split, 31-inch vertical jump, 9'8" broad jump, 7.32 second 3-cone, which is slower than you'd like, and a 4.4 second short shuttle, which is slower than you'd like. But that's like height, weight, and speed. So as a later round option, maybe need to have a delve into the Duke linebackers tape. But like the rest of the class is like there's stuff with like them just being too short or not long enough. There's just not the height and weight and speed, and it just sort of speaks to how college football's changed. Like Jack Campbell out of Iowa tested brilliantly, like, and I believe he could rise very much so. Like he could be like, second guy off the board potentially. 4.65 second 40, 1.59 seconds 10-yard split, 37.5-inch vertical, 10 for 8-inch broad, 6.74 seconds 3-cone, 4.24 seconds short shuttle. So that's like loads of ticks, and a lot more size than typical. And he called the kind of defense at Iowa and showed intelligence. And he's one of these guys who's sort of communicating to the extent you can see it on tape, but that's kind of just, I don't know how much that is more than other guys. But anyway, he did that. But he had 31 and 7/8 of an inch long arms. As we just said, like Barton had short arms. Like if they really like the prospect, they'll do it if the price is right as well. But I think with how poor the class is, Campbell might be elevated out of their taste and also be in a lot of demand because there's not many other types like that. And that is brilliant testing numbers. So,
Right.
yeah. Have you watched any of these guys? Is there anyone else I'm missing?
No, I have not. So that's the one thing I've seen a little bit of Drew Sanders and a little bit of Henley. And beyond that, I know nothing about these linebackers. I wasn't even paying attention to Simpson and watching the Clemson defensive lineman. So
there you go. And we should say as well that what's his name? Who did you just mention?
Simpson
Before. Oh,
Henley,
Sanders. Bruce Sanders. He decided not to run, which like fine. But he did measure in with arms shorter than 33 inches, 32 and an eighth of an inch, and he was 6'4", 235 pounds. And it's interesting how, like, again, maybe because that's how college football's going and how often they send the inside linebacker from an off-ball position in like four-man rush, but with odd spacing, or how often they just put this guy down on the edge. But like Sanders, also Simpson, they were kind of used in that fifth edge role, and
right.
You inevitably get like the national media talking like, "Oh, you could be like a Micah Parsons type player," and it's like, okay, yeah. If that helps you envision the role, then fine. But that's not.
In looking at the other linebackers they've drafted, they all have hundreds and hundreds of snaps, and they're very clearly. It's very clear what they project to. Like even Brooks,
running, tackling, and just hundreds of it.
Yeah,
along with like ability to carry stuff downfield.
Right. And like Brooks showed that in spades before his senior year. People thought Brooks was a projection based off his senior year tape. But if you go into his sophomore and junior year, so there's so much of it. I mean, Cody Barton did nothing but like hook drop all day long, the occasional carry 3 up. I mean, obviously like Malcolm Smith, Bobby Wagner at Utah. Like,
if you go to the first episode of the Seattle Overload podcast, if you can find it, well done. You'll see that Griff and I, we were blown away by Brooks and his resume even before his senior season.
Yeah.
After our initial shock.
Right. I mean, KJ Wright, I think he played some outside linebacker in college at Mississippi State, but he was a 5th round pick. So.
And he had crazy shuttle, right?
Probably.
Yeah, KJ Wright. Oh no, he didn't. Oh yeah, it was crazy broad jump.
He was a 4th round pick. My bad. I knew that. Shame on me.
Oh, there you go. And a cool guy. Right then. I think that's the combine done of the front 7. We'll be back with more combine stuff, but the front 7 was a very important area for Seattle, so we just went into it. We're also very excited about the combine. Ty and I are going to be back on Saturday with a news roundup because lots of stuff has happened in Seattle. Sean Desai, Austin Blythe, other things. We will be delving into them. More stuff might have happened as well. We'll also be able to talk about the Seahawks press conferences that have taken place. Aaron Donkor got signed away to the Houston Roughnecks I think they're the XFL. So, yeah, lots of news to talk about. Then Sunday, we will have a combine recap. Griff, you can do Sunday, yes?
Yes.
There you go. We'll have a combine recap uh, after the final stuff has gone on with the wide receivers. We'll talk about it a bit more in broader terms, maybe some key standouts and then some key disappointments of the events. Until then, like the video. I'm not sure how many likes we have. I'm going to check now. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment. Don't be afraid. Thank you everyone for joining in as well. Also, please do. We've only got 15 likes, so that can go up, please. And give us a 5-star review. Download the podcast and let us know in the comments which player you found the most standouty, which player you want to be a Seattle Seahawk. And I'm sure that will happen because if there's one thing we know about the Seahawks, they always do what the fans want them to do.
That's right.
Absolutely. Have a good evening or night.